In 1930, a small plane flew over the highlands of Papua New Guinea and saw something nobody in the outside world knew existed: a valley, fertile, populated, enormous, over 1 million people living in complete isolation from the rest of humanity. Expedition leader Michael Leahy landed. The local people ran toward him. Lee's hand moved toward his weapon. The Highlanders stopped. Nobody knew what the other was. Leahy thought they might attack. The Highlanders thought Leahy was the ghost of an ancestor. His pale skin, his metal tools, nothing they had a category for. Both sides stood still. Then an elder stepped forward. Hands open, voice slow, eyes steady. He spoke for several minutes. Leahy understood nothing, but nobody moved to attack, because both sides were running the same ancient protocol, a set of signals your species developed specifically for this moment. The moment when you encounter someone your entire nervous system is screaming might kill you, and you need to find out, without dying, whether they will. On the other side of the world, the Sentinelese have been answering that question the same way for 60,000 years, with arrows. The question is what everyone else figured out instead. In the world your ancestors lived in, your entire social universe was 30 to 50 people. You knew everyone's name, their history, their moods, their likely behavior on any given day. A stranger was not just an unknown person. A stranger was an unknown variable in an environment where unknown variables killed you, and the evidence confirms this wasn't paranoia. A 2022 genome study from the Max Planck Institute analyzed DNA from Paleolithic Europeans dating back 30,000 to 45,000 years. The results showed significant genetic overlap between groups separated by hundreds of kilometers, not from migration, but from regular intermarriage across generations, which most known as these groups were meeting each other deliberately and repeatedly. But the same archaeological record that shows this contact also shows its cost: fractured skulls, error points embedded in bone, not organized warfare. Small, frequent, violent encounters between groups who hadn't yet established the trust to predict each other's behavior. Stranger anxiety appears in human infants at exactly 8 months old. Every culture, every continent, no exceptions. 8 months is precisely when infants become mobile enough to crawl away from their caregivers. Nobody teaches a baby to fear strangers. The ones who didn't have that response didn't survive long enough to pass it on, but they couldn't avoid each other forever. Inbreeding is a death sentence for small groups. A band of 30 people cannot reproduce within itself for more than a few generations before genetic problems accumulate to dangerous levels. Every hunter-gatherer group ever documented maintained relationships beyond their core band. Roughly 150 people in a wider network met periodically, usually once or twice a year. Robin Dunbar at Oxford confirmed this pattern across dozens of documented groups. To maintain that network, they had to meet people from other groups, regularly, in a controlled way, and the 2022 Max Planck data revealed something that should change how we think about prehistoric life entirely. People 40,000 years ago were actively maintaining long-distance genetic networks across hundreds of kilometers, not accidentally, not through random wandering, systematically, across multiple generations. That only works if there's a protocol reliable enough that two unfamiliar groups are willing to hand their children to each other. The pressure to meet strangers and the danger of meeting strangers created an evolutionary problem that needed solving. The solution wasn't a weapon, it was a ritual. Anthropologist Marshall Sahlins spent decades documenting first contact protocols across hunter-gatherer groups on multiple continents. The pattern was consistent enough to be unsettling. Meetings were never sudden. Both sides left deliberate signals in advance: smoke, sounds, tracks placed where they'd be found, enough warning for both groups to prepare. On approach, weapons were lowered or held in ways that clearly communicated non-aggression. The first person to step forward was always the oldest, least physically threatening, most socially credible. Then came the exchange. Anthropologist Marcel Mauss spent decades studying gift exchange across pre-modern societies. His conclusion: giving gifts to strangers wasn't optional, it was mandatory, and critically, the gift had to be accepted. Refusing a stranger's gift was a declaration of hostility. Accepting created 3 simultaneous obligations: to give, to receive, and to reciprocate. 3 obligations that built a web of mutual dependency neither side wanted to destroy through violence. The Iroquois took this further. They developed wampum, strings of shell beads, as a physical language for intergroup meetings. Each pattern communicated a specific message: peace offering, alliance proposal, territorial boundary, an object that witnessed agreements between people who shared no spoken language and had no reason yet to trust a translator. Not ceremony, engineering. Every element of that protocol is still running in you. The handshake began as proof of empty hands, right hand extended, palm visible, shaken to demonstrate nothing hidden in the sleeve, eye contact held at exactly the right level, not averted, which signals deception, not sustained, which signals challenge. The specific duration your culture considers appropriate was calibrated over thousands of years of reading those signals. Small talk about weather, about directions, about something completely neutral. Not because the content matters, but because exchanging harmless information is the fastest way to establish that both parties are willing to communicate rather than attack. The awkwardness you feel when meeting a stranger, not knowing where to look, not knowing what to do with your hands, the slight tension in your shoulders isn't social anxiety. It's a threat assessment system built over 50,000 years, scanning an unknown variable, waiting for enough safety signals to stand down. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do, running the protocol, checking for the right responses, deciding moment by moment whether this person is going to be added to the small circle of people you trust, or whether this is one of the situations your 8-month-old self already knew to be afraid of. Go back to that valley in Papua New Guinea. Liahi and the elder, no shared language, no shared context. 50,000 years of separation between their lineages, and yet both sides knew exactly what to do. Hands open, voice slow, no sudden movements. Liahi offered a small gift. The elder accepted, then offered something in return. That exchange had no economic value. It had signal value. I give you something, you give me something back. And now we've both created a small obligation neither of us wants to destroy with violence right now. Two cultures with no contact for 50,000 years. Same protocol, because the protocol isn't cultural, is the hardware of the species. Every time you meet someone new and don't know what to do with your hands, you're living in that moment. Every time you accept something offered to you by a stranger, even something small, even something you didn't need, you're running the same system that kept your ancestors alive through thousands of years of necessary, dangerous, unavoidable contact with people who had every reason not to trust them. The Sentinelese chose the other option, 60,000 years of arrows. Everyone else chose this. Open hands, slow voice, give something first, and see what comes back.